to be able to start this, we were just giving it a few seconds to be able to see whether we can get a few more people joining us this particular morning. My name is Mbithe Mwema, and I am the Chief Executive Officer of Infallible Group. Today, I have the honor and the privilege of moderating this conversation on the evolution of cybercrime. This is a webinar that has been brought to you by CPF Consulting. This is such a timely webinar because we are in a space where, according to research, 16 billion records have been exposed to data breaches in 2020 alone. So alongside having to deal with COVID-19, the changing evolution of how we work and how we interact has actually presented opportunities for risk to actually present itself. And we have seen breaches in as far as information and data extraction is concerned. Cybercrime has since ceased to be a common terminology, and all the data security contenders in the marketplace combined have not been able to prevent breaches on data extraction. Laws around the world are also changing, making CEOs personally liable for the outcome of data breaches. The prevailing challenge of our digital neighbors has created a very high level of exposure, even to institutions. In the recent past, across all industries and in our own individual circles, everyone has migrated to working remotely, and technology has proven to be the king of collaboration. This has made work at home spaces easy targets to many cyber criminals. It is prudent that as individuals and companies, we are all aware of the specific targets, how to mitigate and build a secure fence and counterattack to the members of the dark web, that is the cyber criminals. Whether you are joining us from Kenya or from anywhere across the globe, this pertinent conversation is something that is affecting you either at an individual level or at an institutional level. As part of the CPF consulting community, we want to spearhead the conversation and the thought leadership in terms of what is cybercrime, how do you think about it, and what mitigations are available for you to be able to manage the risk affiliated with this new normal that we have presented to us today. Once again, a warm welcome. Today, we are discussing the evolution of cybercrime. I will be taking you through the housekeeping rules, and then without any further delay, I will start to introduce our keynote speakers of the day. We are using technology, so if you have any hiccup, not to worry, this conversation is going on for the next 1.5 hours. In case of any blurring or anything that you're not able to understand, please just log off and then log back on and know that we are here and we are engaging on cybersecurity. Alternatively, if you would like either your colleagues or friends or anybody to be able to access this particular conversation, we highly encourage you to go to the CPF Kenya YouTube page or Facebook page. This particular conversation is running live concurrently on these particular platforms. Now, when it comes to cybersecurity, it's a hard term. It's harder to break it down. But let me start by giving you an example. Just today, I actually survived a cyber attack. Yes, I got a phishing email. So a company sort of came across using a company that I have been interacting with, and I was very quick to click on the link and put in my details because it's a company that I have been interacting with. So cybercrime is real. It happens to us at individual levels. Lucky for me, the email address that I used didn't have confidential data. But imagine if that access had been granted to an email that actually had confidential data. So this thing is certainly very pertinent to us and for me at a personal level. For today's order of events, we will start off with setting the stage. Why cybercrime? Yes, forget that Mbithe has had a phishing attack, but what is important? Why should you even pay attention to this? Mr. Tony Olang, who is an executive director at Lights, will be giving us an overview of why this conversation is important. He will lay the stage for what to expect as we go through the day. We have two keynote speakers. His Excellency, Dr. Roland Roberts, who is the Chief Executive of Courageous, will be joining us all the way from Florida. It's such an honor and a privilege to have him joining us. It's only 3 a.m. from where he's at, but he looks as fresh as can ever be. Our second keynote speaker is Mr. Musa Wasitsa, who is the Managing Director for Sentinel Africa. Musa will be joining us from Nairobi. Once we are done with this keynote conversations, we will have a contributory remark from June Nyakan Munyeki, who is the founder and CEO of TWOW. We also want to hear your voice in this matter. Do you care for this conversation? What are the risks that you face in your day to day? And what would you like us to be able to do to help this conversation on cybersecurity, whether at an individual level, but more importantly, at an institutional level, pertinent and easier for you? That's a conversation that we will hope to have. And we want you to be able to go to the chat box. There is a question and answer session there. You can be able to start putting up your questions. If you are watching us live on Facebook or YouTube, put your questions there. We will have time later on to be able to address this extensively. What are the objectives of this particular conversation, you might be wondering? We want to cover a couple of things. We want to help you understand when it comes to cybersecurity, what is it? Secondly, should you actually pursue an internal strategy if you want to be able to implement it? Or is there an opportunity to outsource it to external professionals, people who have the wherewithal to be able to address this particular resource? Thirdly, at a board level, at a strategic level, at a tactical level, how should you be considering this? So that by the end of this discourse, we want to have explained the evolution of cybersecurity. What is it? What strategies are available to you? And how can we, as part of the CPF consulting community, be able to work with you and partner with you to be able to help you mitigate the risks affiliated with cybersecurity? I will start us now off on the official program of the day. We start off with Mr. Tony Olang, who is an Executive Director at Lights. Tony Olang, prepare to unmute your mic as well as to show us your camera. Allow me to introduce Mr. Tony Olang. Mr. Tony Olang has a career spanning over 19 years in the financial services, ICT, and renewable energy sector. Tony has contributed significantly towards the adoption of technology for business processes in the region and more so for the CPF group. Tony holds an MSc in Information Systems Security from the Universidad Empresarial de Costa Rica and a postgraduate diploma in Information Systems Security from the Cambridge Association of Managers, as well as a BSc in Computing from the University of Portsmouth. Tony, over to you for your presentation. You can share your presentation slides with us if you have any. Over to you, Tony.
Thank you, Mbide, for the very warm introduction, and thank you everyone for joining us this morning. I have a few slides which I will share with you to guide the conversation, and please feel free to write down as many questions as you have so that we can have an exciting interaction today. So the first question we ask ourselves is, what is a cyber attack? Which is what the introduction I'm going to give. And then we'll look at the anatomy of an attack. And then we'll ask ourselves what a footprint analysis is. We'll look at how hackers work to gain access to your network, how they then proceed to escalate their privileges to allow them unfettered access to everything that they can manage to access on your network, and how they will then proceed to create a backdoor so that they can keep going in and coming out of your network and taking advantage of what you have in your network. And then I'll present you with 3 case studies. So I'll start off by mentioning that for protection of data in a typical organizational setup, you have your backend, which is your IT department. And then ultimately you have your front end, which is similar to what Mbide has just highlighted, the clicks, which is now a very common conversation in our daily lives. So some brief introductory statistics. 77% of the cybercrime we have going around today is done or executed by very highly organized criminal gangs. The average age of a cyber criminal is 35, and 63% of confirmed data breaches have been conducted via leveraging on weak or default or stolen passwords. What is hacking? In the old school, we knew that hacking a piece of timber or a log was cutting through something with rough or heavy blows. And the Webster's dictionary later on went to add the definition of using a computer to gain unauthorized access to data in a system. And that is going to be the context within which we are having our conversation today. So we generally have three types of hackers. We have the black hats, we have the white hats, better known as the ethical hackers, and we have the gray hats. So the black hats in our conversation are the bad guys. And we have constantly had this saying from one of our top security men saying, you're better off having more guys, or rather more good guys with guns than the bad guys with guns. So that is the approach which we are taking today in thwarting our cyber challenges. The black hats are the criminals, and they use their skills to break into your computer or your network to steal your data. And they may then proceed to sell this data to other criminals. We then
Tony,
have
just continue, but we're struggling to hear you quite clearly. Can you hear us?
I can hear you very clearly, and I apologize.
It's okay. Now we can hear you. Thank you so much for that, Tony. Please continue.
Yes, we then have the white hats, who are the guys doing security research, and they work for organizations or software vendors, and their primary role is to find vulnerabilities in order to develop patches that may mitigate future exposure of the various systems that we are running on. The gray hats look for vulnerabilities within systems without permission, and they don't use the vulnerabilities for illegal purposes, and they may then proceed to disclose this information to governments, law enforcement, or intelligence agencies in order to enable a better functioning and working infrastructure that will enable us to do whatever it is we do on a day-to-day basis. So today's hackers may not be defined as individuals. They may also be defined as nation states. They may be organized criminals. They may be terrorists. They may be hacktivists. And they may be insiders within our organizations. The general anatomy of an attack, or a hack for this matter, is the hacker starts by determining his mission, vision, and objective. So it's a very strategic process in very organized setups. The hacker would then go ahead and conduct a footprint analysis. And this would then mean getting access of related company information, getting a scan or a scout over your digital neighbors. And digital neighbors now has become our very soft spot. We are looking at open source intelligence. This is what is available on the internet. And the question is, if I typed Mbide Mwema's name right now on Google, what will come up? That is open source intelligence. I hope you've not been posting on your Facebook and your various social media platforms, your flight tickets, your bookings, your family, posting their names and all that. This then creates the vulnerabilities that we are talking about. This is open source intelligence, which we willingly, more often than not, give out. The company IP address can also be obtained via your website or your domain. Eavesdroppers, dumpster divers, and simple or basic observers are then able to collect very critical data that could allow a hacker to then gain access into your network. We have the old style of someone calling you from a help desk and asking you for your name and your password and asking you to update your password. Mbide has been sharing with us this morning, and that is one of the key challenges that we need to constantly be looking out for. So on the footprint analysis research, we have mentioned that from a simple internet search, a hacker can then create a profile or an in-depth picture of your business, then proceed to identify potential vulnerabilities, identify digital neighbors, identify your customers, identify and profile your staff members. And in this, there are usually two critical types of staff members that a hacker would be interested in. They are your senior staff, and they are your new employees. On top of that, a hacker will be looking for somebody with admin rights. So if a new employee has admin rights, or you have a new hire in the IT department, this is a very low-hanging fruit for a hacker. Access to press releases, and these press releases normally have vital information on projects you're conducting, on the company, as well as critical staff that you may have working on certain sensitive projects. And there are many other things that a hacker could also get from this footprint analysis. The information that then proceeds to aid hackers are your physical address, your business social media updates. These are some of the things that we were talking about, where you've been traveling to, what you like doing, who are your family members. It then also proceeds to enable the hacker to establish what skill sets are missing in the organization, especially if you've advertised for several IT or cybersecurity positions in the organization. It means that something is happening. Who are your past, who are your present, and who are your future employees? There's a lot of fluidity in the process of recruitment. So HR also need to be very vigilant and very careful about information that may look very innocent and then presents itself as a low-hanging fruit to a hack. Of course, there are many other things that hackers will be able to pick from this. The footprint analysis then continues with port scanning of IP addresses to establish what data is going in and what data is going out. And this process has now evolved over time to the point where software can then be used to continue knocking on your door until something opens. Random data can then be sent to the ports to enable identification of the type of file transfer protocols, identify the email server and software being used. Many port services also respond with banners identifying the software, and this will then lead to banner grabbing. It looks up the software for known vulnerabilities, and most of these vulnerabilities are posted on the internet where people are having conversations about X software having this vulnerability. So if you don't upgrade or if you don't do your patches, and the hacker already knows the version of the software you're using, he has an entry point based on the known weaknesses of your software. The hacker may then use malicious code to then proceed and exploit the vulnerabilities through the employees. And we are still going back to that click. So now gaining access, he has enough information, he knows what he needs to do to then come in. So he has identified the vulnerabilities within the software, he has chosen the malicious code to use, he has identified the employee, better known as Mbide Mwema, who is going to send the email. And he could also then proceed to identify this new IT support staff and request for a password change through a copycat website. And the websites can be built to look exactly the same. And if you're not careful and you're not vigilant, you'll probably not know this and you quickly give your password to the wrong person. And here we are saying, do not click, do not click. Don't click on everything that you find. If you don't trust it, if you have second thoughts about it, do not click. Brute force attacks can also be used. And these brute force attacks are now automated by use of software. So the software can keep knocking on the door, keep punching at your network or punching at your weak points until it gains access. And then we go to the next point where there's escalation of privileges. And once in, the hacker will attempt to escalate privileges. The preferred level would be an administrator level. And this level allows the hacker to install software, change setting, create new accounts, etc., etc. This is a free for all, basically, once the hacker is at this level. Once the hacker has full admin privileges, these are the keys to your kingdom. You are at the hacker's mercy, more or less. So what we constantly need to do is to ensure that we don't let these guys in, because once you expose your information, then you have the challenges to face with a guy from the inside. At this level, sensitive files may easily be visible. And the next level that the hacker would do is to create a backdoor. So even after gaining control of the system and assigning himself full admin privileges, he can then delete whatever access he used and use an alternative one. And of course, your system will automatically be doing maintenance, so the maintenance may catch this. So in order for him to be able to keep coming in and out at his own convenience, he will install a backdoor so that he can keep coming in and out. And this is usually created by a Trojan or another virus. This goes back to the historical situation of Trojan horses. And the file would naturally be named in a manner to minimize suspicion. So he will have studied how you name your documents and given it a name that creates a lot of comfort within the organization. So our first case study is the Office of Personnel Management, which is the central HR office for the federal government. And it assists in hiring, providing background checks and training programs for new staff. And in this case, we can see how many fingerprint records, how many security clearance background checks, how many former and current employee records and files were stolen. And part of this was because they didn't employ the best practice in what we are talking about right now. Now, just so that you get a feel of the value of some of this data, in the dark web, a social security record will go for about $1. So if someone steals 21.5 million records, he can auction this on the dark web for about $21.5 million. That then gives you the value of what this data is. And a timeline of how that hack evolved between 2014 and 2015 was that the computer incidents report team identified that there was a third party doing data exfiltration. And in 2014 and 2015, they were struggling to get the first hacker out. Meanwhile, they had a second hacker in the system. The second case study was about Sony Pictures. And I'm trying to keep time, I'm trying to abide by time, but this information will be available to all the participants. Now, in this case, the challenge was that there was a controversial movie that was about to be released, and the hackers didn't want Sony Pictures to release the movie. So in September 2014, they gained access, and the Guardians of Peace took responsibility for the hack, and they then proceeded to release all sorts of sensitive information on staff and the organization. The third case study we are looking at is Home Depot. In this case, credit card information of 52 million shoppers, and we are still talking about $1 per unit of information, which then gives you a feel that this hack was valued at about $52 million. They then went to sell this on the dark web, and additional layers of security could have rescued the organizations from this. And this timeline that I'm presenting gives us a feel of how long it generally takes for us to get a feel or to identify that there is somebody unauthorized running our systems. I think with that, Mbide, I'm very grateful, and I probably hand it over to you at this point.
All right, thank you so much, Tony. That it's Tony Olang. He is the executive director at Lights. Tony, that is such an insightful overview of today's conversation. You're telling us it can affect you, especially if you are an artist or if you are also putting out your own content, as we have seen in the case study for Sony. Tony is also telling us that HR departments are a high threat area because of the kind of records that they carry. In other words, cybersecurity affects all of us. I think the question here, are you a black hat? Are you a white hat? Are you a gray hat? Now, we are still taking in your questions. Please put them up on our question and answer chat box. If you are watching us online on YouTube or Facebook Live, we encourage you to also put up your questions as well as your comments. We will be able to take this later on. Tony, please stop sharing your screen. But before I move over to our keynote speakers, there is a pressing question. Let me just quickly ask this, just to also help us create the perspective of why are we focusing on cybersecurity and what needs to be done. Tony, is there a program in Kenya for hiring and mentoring grey hats, especially in light of what is happening with the two JKUAT students who are being prosecuted by NCBA? Now, I know that's a sensitive scenario because you don't know the entire storyline from both sides, but the question here is rather than looking at cyber attacks and the proponents of cyber attacks as the enemy, is there a way that you can convert them to white hats, especially when it comes to the gray area where you're not too sure where they stand and if they're not internal to the organization? We can take that brief response, but keep your questions coming and we will be able to take this later on. Over to you, Tony.
Thank you very much, Mbide. Like I mentioned earlier, a hacker will normally have a mission and an objective. So we need to go back and establish what the mission and objective of the hacker was, and then build it from there. I
Yes.
think that's the response I'll give for now.
Okay, thank you so much. So I can see there are questions. Please keep the questions coming. We will have our two keynote speakers talk to us, then we will have contributing remarks, and I'll come back to you. But at least after each speaker, I can be able to take one pertinent question. So keep those questions coming. Now, today's conversation, Evolution of Cybercrime, a very timely conversation that is brought to you courtesy of CPF Consulting. We are working from home, and owing to the onset of COVID-19, our environment has changed. Technology is defining our business processes. However, there are risks that abound, especially when it comes to the breach of data. How do we mitigate this? How do we craft strategies to address this? And how do we ensure that we are giving the best to our customers, our personnel, all the stakeholders that we engage with in as far as data and cybersecurity are concerned? We have two keynote speakers who I will introduce. We will start off with His Excellency, Dr. Roland Roberts, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Courageous. Dr. Roberts is joining us all the way from Florida. He is quite passionate about this conversation because it's 3 a.m. his time. So we are certainly very excited to have him here. I will introduce him and you can prepare yourself to take us through your keynote presentation. His Excellency Dr. Roland Roberts is an advisor to African governments and was nominated to the Central Command's Departments of Defense Civilian Task Force. He founded Transform Africa Inc., Roland College, and Courageous, an artificial general intelligence and quantum cybersecurity think tank that serves advanced defense security initiatives of national governments. His Excellency Dr. Roland was recognized as the top 100 most influential Floridians of 2015 by Insight magazine. Now, we have many of us on this call, so I will ask you to just keep your mics muted unless you are speaking to us. Thank you very much. Dr. Roland has served as the CEO of Hoverboard Company, creating the best-selling consumer product worldwide in 2015, and he has crafted viral global brands as the Chief Executive Officer of both public and private SMBs to multi-billion-dollar companies. He hosts the annual African Diplomatic Entrepreneur Summit in partnership with multiple African governments. We call Dr. Roland His Excellency because he was awarded the Peace Ambassador to world governments by the International College of Peace Studies, and he has served as an advisor to the top 20 startup companies in the world. He has worked with the private sector, works with government. So when it comes to cybersecurity, he is the security man who can help us understand it. Over to you, Your Excellency, Dr. Roland Roberts, and a very warm good morning. Over to you, Dr. Roberts.
Thank you so much, Madam Muema, and it's a pleasure to be with everyone today on the African continent and abroad. You know, the evolution of cybercrime really begins with the advent of the internet, and the internet was not created with security in mind, and that therein lies one of the major problems. It was meant initially as communication protocol and tools for defense initiatives, and it has morphed into something that no one saw coming. We have the ability now to handle the next wave in a more secure manner, where security is the foundational topic when you build something like this, such as in an artificial intelligent world. And much of cybersecurity is now implementing artificial intelligence. So it's not so much an individual usually that's just sitting there trying to hack into your social media account and just mine things one by one. It is individuals that deploy applications that can scrape and can get mass amounts of volume of data quickly and effortlessly. I think we have, it is a shame that we still, as companies and individuals, deal with malware and ransomware. These are problems that we have solved from a cybersecurity perspective several years ago. There is still but what we found was that executives and people who could actually control cybercrime were not willing to invest in the solutions. And that is why you have seen governments around the world impose fines and also jail time for executives that do not properly secure the data. And because if they were not forced to do it, if it was just a corporate liability, the individuals didn't take enough responsibility as leaders, sadly, to proactively protect the data. And part of it, to Mr. Olling's previous remarks, is difficult. People have not known how valuable data is because it's unseen. If they broke into your home and took half of your belongings, you would be in an uproar. They take some data and you don't see an immediate feedback, such as something's missing, and so therefore you minimize its risk and importance in your life, not realizing the much broader scope. So the artificial intelligence side of cybersecurity is ever evolving. The cybercrime, it's learning mass amounts of behavior. It is true that the COVID pandemic created the Christmas of all cyber attacks and for cybercrime around the world. In the first week that this hit, the National Health Services of several nations were hit and attacked more than we've seen in almost, of any individual attack. Thousands and thousands of attacks per hour on just one particular system. And so these are not thousands of people trying to hack in and get something. These are advanced deployment, software deployment. And it's not just this far beyond phishing and hacking and sending you a text message saying that you need to update this, or we'd like to have a phone call with you, the IRS, or your taxes, you're delinquent and you need to call this number right now in order to not go to jail. Those kind of, scare and fear tactic protocol is definitely for a lot of the small time hackers, and people still fall for a lot of that, unfortunately. But the major issue as I see it in the cybercrime world is so much further advanced. That's why, from a corporate perspective, when we hear people say change your password often and make it harder and make it longer, and it needs to be changed every 90 days and has to include a digit and capitals and lowercase and figures and asterisks and exclamation marks and so forth. These are very minor blocks. Even VPN, everyone thinks that they're so secure working remote, but companies have known for a long time that using VPN is like locking your front door and then leaving your door wide open. You're not stopping anything. You feel better about it because your door is locked, but it's worthless. It's called optics. It's alleviating your fear, but it doesn't really solve much of anything from the professional hackers, that are where the real threats lie, from that perspective. So those are some of the overview of where cybercrime has started, where it's evolving. It is much more sophisticated. There's still the low-level hackers that are kind of introductory, that just try to do the phishing and the scamming and so forth. But I equate those very similar to like the credit card scammers, the ones who put it on gas station machines or things along those lines, where they're trying to just get your credit card number and go make $1,000 purchase somewhere, which many banks now are returning. When I look at just nearly every industry, the insurance space, the financial services space, even in Africa, met with a bank that lost $400 million in an attack over the last 12 months, one cyber attack. This is a massive issue. So if you're in the cybercrime business, you're not going to focus on getting someone's Facebook password whenever people always post, "Oh, I've been hacked." Nobody cares. What we care about is the $400 million that one particular group can lose in a heartbeat, which is a million people's money. That's what we're really focused on in the cybercrime world and preventing that. But there's many more implications when it comes to cybercrime. Many of our weapons now use drone technology and software, and so we're talking a lot about personal data. But quite frankly, I'm concerned about the wrong people hacking into the missile that's headed towards one place and directing it to you. I'm worried about people redirecting satellites and redirecting, tapping in and hacking into certain other weapons and using them for devious purposes. So as it relates to cybercrime, it goes far beyond the computer. We have some advanced technologies that could immediately provide feedback, negative feedback that is, to people doing cybercrime. But we are in a state right now, nationally, internationally, where those weapons must be used very strategically, because there is a race for artificial intelligent cybercrime weapons. So, Madam Muema, back to you, and happy to take questions.
Thank you so much. I know it's not a very easy conversation, but what you're telling us, that the basics, VPN, passwords, change your passwords. So I will come back to you a bit later on. I think we will listen to the second keynote conversation. Then we can be able now to take questions just to get into the crux of this conversation. It's not only about understanding the evolution of cybercrime, it's about understanding the evolution of cybercrime in your institution. Whether you are a micro or a macro business, how does this conversation relate to you? So please keep your questions coming in. We will be able to take this in about 10 or so minutes after our contributing remarks, as well as the second keynote conversation. If you are joining us live, that's Facebook Live or YouTube Live on the CPF Kenya page, you can be also able to put up your questions there. We will come back to them. So it's such a pertinent conversation, such a timely conversation. Our second keynote speaker, and this is Mr. Musa Watutha, please prepare to unmute your mic and share your slides. Mr. Musa is a professional risk practitioner, and he is passionate about information security with a focus on implementation, maintenance, and auditing of information security management systems based on ISO 27001. As the managing director of Sentinel Africa Consulting and a certified BSI and PECB trainer, Musa champions the training and implementation of information security and business continuity management systems in Kenya. I can only imagine how busy your input tray has been, Musa, over the last 6 or so months, especially in light of what is happening. Please unmute your mic, and we await and eagerly, when we are eager to hear what your presentation is. Over to you, Musa.
Thank you, Mbito. Good morning, everybody. So my name is Musa. So thank you for the introduction. So I have some slides here to sort of like just guide the conversation. So let me just share my screen, and then we can go right into it. So, Mbito, as you've said, we are what we call evangelists, and what we evangelize is information security, because there's many aspects to information security. There's a technology part of it, and then there's a people part of it. Now, what we try to focus on is on the people perspective, because we have seen that when you look at actually successful threats, successful cyber hacks, you'll see that most of it happened because of the people. So if we focus on the insiders, the staff, we'll find that we'll be able to actually contribute to resolving this issue by a very big percentage. And also, when you look at the human beings who are inside, a big majority of them are actually compromised. Up to 55% actually compromised because of carelessness. It's actually about behavior. So I just have some small slides here just to take us through that conversation, and I hope we'll talk about this some more. So talk about evolution. So very quickly, cybersecurity and cybersecurity issues, cybercrime is not a new thing. Yeah, this has been happening since a long time ago. Actually, the term hacker, you'd be interested to know that the term hacker didn't mean somebody bad. Actually, it meant somebody who was a bit, a bit of a techie, yeah, a bit of a nerd, a bit of somebody who knew more than the next guy. So a hacker would actually be somebody who would probably want to go, peel the covers and try and find out how does this thing actually work, that kind of person. That was actually the genesis of the term hacker. Then, of course, over time, you found that this kind of interest, this kind of need to find out how do things work, of course, meant that because you know how things work, that means you know how to break them, yeah? So then you find that in this day and age, the term hacker is used with, those negative connotations to it, yeah? So, but basically just coming into the age now where we are at, I won't talk too much about the background, but we know that now we're really fighting with things around cyber warfare. We're really fighting with things around APTs, which are the advanced persistent threats. We're talking about ransomware. We hear about ransomware a lot. We have a client right now at Centel who are trying to assist because they actually have been hit by ransomware, and we're trying to get them to see whether they can recover some of their data. And we are fighting with malware. So this malware has been around also from a long time ago. And basically malware, I think when many people think about malware, they think about virus. Okay, there are many more types of malware than viruses. So we have things like worms, we have a Trojan horse, we have your ransomware, we have spyware, we have clickware, we have things that you probably are installing on your machine, you're installing on your phone, you're installing on your tab because you're thinking that, they're sort of like genuine software. We have a term in cybersecurity, it's called FUD, and FUD basically means fear, uncertainty, and doubt. So if I can use any of those against you, then I can get you to click on my link. So it either be because I have sent you something and it's flashing on your screen and it's telling you that you are actually now under attack. If you click on this, then you're going to install a free anti-malware, something to clean your screen. Then because of that fear, because you're not sure, and because you have this doubt, then this cybersecurity thing sounds so so out there. You probably click on it because you want to clean out your machine, and so then that's how you install this thing in your machine. So again, apart from malware, we have social engineering. Social engineering is where you actually fall prey to your own human weakness. And our human weakness is we like to help, okay? But they do not be surprised, yeah? Majority of human beings want to help. And because of that nature, we fall victim to some of these attacks. Also, we are susceptible because we don't know. So you'll find that somebody sent you an email, then because of that email, you're not too sure about it. You probably click on it because you want to know. So the other aspect about human beings is that we're curious. So again, curiosity, yes, you click on that link because you're curious, you just want to know what will happen. Be that you said it yourself today in the morning, you found a link because you trusted, so you trust. Again, that's human nature. You click on the link, again, because we're greedy, yeah? So we have a free thing. So you've been given this free thing, you'll be given this free, that if you click on this, instead of getting one, you'll get two. So that greed also is part of human nature. So social engineering basically is simply that. It is an attack against human beings because of our human nature. And so these things that we talk about these days around phishing. So what is phishing? Phishing is basically me sending you a malicious link through your email or a malicious attachment through your email, and you click on it, and therefore you get infected. Or a spearfish. Spearfish is a specific fish that I created specifically for you so that you really trust it, okay? And then whaling targets the big fish, so to speak. So it targets the CEOs, targets the C-suite of the organization, so that the most critical people who it targets. And smishing is basically with SMSs, and phishing is basically using voice calls. Okay, so going on quickly, just to talk about something that is happening right now currently in the news. So there's an energy company in Italy that has been hit by ransomware again. The first time it happened was in June. And then at least in June, they managed to sort of like contain it. So he didn't exploit the entire of their domain. But now again, it has happened just this week. And then so it's all over in the news. So they have this ransomware called Networker. So it's hit them. And then basically right now it has the group behind it have actually sent them a note, a ransomware note, asking for the tune of 1,234 Bitcoins. So I checked the latest numbers of the Bitcoin in Kenya shillings. one Bitcoin is now 1.4 million Kenya shillings. So if you're looking at 1,234 Bitcoins, that will take you just shy of maybe it's 1.5 billion Kenya shillings, around $14 million. Yeah. So you can talk, when you talk about the value of these things, this is what we're talking about. Okay. So now, what do we do? So are we helpless? Is there something that we can do? Yes, there is something we can do. So what we usually advise is implement a cyber resilience program. Implement something in the organization, yeah, that can actively and proactively take care of your staff. So we're looking at identification of cyber threats. You need to be able to proactively identify your cyber threats and classify them. Then we need to identify what is our critical assets, our processes. We need to know how we can protect those, okay? Then we're talking about, do we have a process where we can have either internally a set of people sitting, looking, checking, being proactive, yeah, where we have some threat intelligence, or can we outsource it to an organization or a body that basically are sitting and thinking, and this is what they do on a day-to-day basis, and then they can always do the monitoring for us. So these are the things we're talking about. And then, of course, for you here who has logged in, what are you going to do for yourself? So this is something that I just wanted to share. For us as individuals, as we are logging onto the internet and doing things, we usually use our passwords and email addresses all over the place. So this is one thing you can do for yourself. So just go to this website called haveibeenpwned.com, okay? Then put in your email address. I've used mine. So my email address is wesutsamusa@gmail.com. So what I'm doing is just clicking on Pwned. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to find out if my email address, this email address, musawesutsa@gmail.com, has been compromised somewhere on the internet. So this will tell me that. And yes, so I have been compromised. So if you're like me, then you're part of the 164 million email addresses and passwords that were exposed in May 2016 from LinkedIn. Okay, but what does this mean? So it means that if you had a LinkedIn account, more likely than not, in 2016, it was harvested. So the email address and the password you were using was harvested. So what that tells you is that this is a pair. It's a pair. So there's the email address and the password. Okay, so they're together. So what that means is you should not use that pair anywhere else again. And remember, the internet does not forget. So sometimes we sit down and say, okay, what password should I use? And then you remember that favorite password of yours, and then you really, really want to use it. So my advice to you is just forget about it. Don't ever use that pair again, because the internet will never forget, and immediately use that, you already are putting yourself at risk out there. And we should not reuse passwords. So don't reuse the same password for your Gmail. Don't use the same password for your LinkedIn, the same password for your Facebook, the same password for your online banking accounts. So that is my advice to you today. And hopefully we can have a more interesting conversation as we go. So, Bite, that was all I had to share for today. Back over to you.
Thank you so much for that. I was actually up there on that Pwned website, putting up my personal one and my normal one. My Gmail has been pwned a couple of times, so thank you for that heads up. So I need to now make an adjustment. But what I hear you saying, what I hear Dr. Roland saying, what I hear Tony saying is, yes, this is supposed to be an institutional task, but an institutional is made up of you and I. It's made up of individuals. So it has to first start with, am I cautious about the cybersecurities that I am putting myself or I am engaging with every day? And simply put, ladies and gentlemen, I mean, cybersecurity is all about the protection of internet connected systems. So whether it's your hardware, your phone, or whether it's your software, the processes that you are engaging in, whether it's internally at an institutional level or out of your institutional level, or data. So anything that you are engaging in this particular universe that we live in today is risk and is prone to high risk when it comes to cybersecurity. We are continuing with this conversation, and I want to hear your questions, especially when it comes to businesses. Then how do you think about this? I will be able to front a few questions to our key speakers for this particular conversation. But before we do that, a poll has actually popped up on your screen, and we would like to hear so that we can have a sense of who are we and where are we at, and what are our cybersecurity where are we standing at when it comes to cybersecurity. So very quickly, if you can just help us answer that and submit it, we would appreciate. Keep your questions coming, and we will be able to take that. Let me start with with Dr. Roland Roberts. Dr. Robert, you have worked with the security agencies at a national level. You also work with the private sector. You've also worked with startups, meaning that you have a broad spectrum in terms of understanding the cybersecurity threats, especially when it comes to businesses. Dr. Roberts, how do we look at it from a very basic level? If I am a startup or I am a mid-sized company, and with the onset of technology, what are the key strategic considerations that I should have in place when I'm thinking about processes? And should I think about getting somebody to do it for me externally, or should I look for somebody to do it for me internally? Over to you, Dr. Roberts.
Thank you so much, Madam Muema. I want to bring up a couple points to answer that question. Number one, if we have learned anything, is that we can't put the cybersecurity genie back in the bottle for the internet and for our networks. You can focus on your perimeter, but 82% of the cyber attacks are happening from inside your network, people who have legitimate access to it that they're able to gain. Or the other side is such as Edward Snowden effect. The other side is that we use digital neighbors. Digital neighbors, you may spend $10 million a year securing your own networks, but I promise you do not spend $10 million for each one of your remote employees to make their home networks that robust, or to all of your integrators and the open APIs that you use in order to do business on a daily basis. So you can do all of the network perimeter protection you want. But so ultimately you need to move away from thinking about cybersecurity as cybersecurity, and you need to move and start thinking of it in terms of data security. How do I secure my data at a fundamental level at all times, no matter what network it goes to, no matter if it's 10,000 people removed from me? I need to be able to control and own and maintain my data at all times, including if it has been downloaded to a thumb drive, hard drive, and no longer have access to it. We have to be able to control data at all times so that at that point, any hack that comes in, big deal, there's nothing there. It's an empty shell. It's invaluable to you. The other piece that I would tell you as it relates to the digital neighbors and focusing on data security is to also be aware of the genetic biohacking that is emerging, where they are hacking in. One of the fastest ways to make millions of dollars right now is not in trying to get a bunch of people to be gullible. It is actually hacking into someone's pacemaker and saying, if you do not wire $3 million in the next 60 minutes, I'm shutting it off. Or in your insulin pump, I'm about to pump you full and it will kill you in seconds if I don't get this amount in this amount of time. So the more advanced our healthcare initiatives get, the biohacking will continue to occur. And you're talking about that, there's a whole lot more of an immediate implication in that realm. So data security and digital neighbors are the two places that small and medium-sized SMEs should be focusing on.
Thank you so much for that, Dr. Roberts. Let me just come back to that perspective, because we're trying to understand the strategic element. So you are bringing out the element of cost, because there's a cost element to it. I have to ring fence my internal data protection and cybersecurity at a strategic level, but I also have to think about my stakeholders. And now I know it's an easier conversation when the larger institutions talk about it, because they possibly have a balance sheet that can be able to manage this from a strategic standpoint. You do engage a lot with Africa, and Africa has a myriad of mid-sized as well as small companies. Now, with the onset of COVID-19, with the onset of a digital economy coming upon us, how then do companies think about this strategically? Then I will come to Tony as well as Musa with separate questions as we go along. Over to you, Dr. Roberts.
Certainly. So cost is a factor, but you have to understand what is the cost if they do. This is the reason why it has been forced by governments, because it at one point, on one hand, it seems like it's difficult to get an exact ROI on it. But what I can tell you is that data security is becoming increasingly important to consumers. And so it will become a business decision. I was saddened whenever even a chairman and CEO of an African organization, financial institution, as a matter of fact, actually believed that he wanted me to just go talk to the technical team. He was like, that's for them. And I said, no, sir, actually, it's for you. This is a leadership issue. And it will not, whenever you have a data breach at this bank, they will not be going and saying, where's the security team? I want to talk to them. They'll be saying, where's the chairman? Where's the CEO? The security team's not going to jail. The security team's not paying fines. You will be. So my point is, you can't afford not to address this. And the costs are coming down tremendously in this regard. You're not having to spend millions of dollars anymore to secure your data, especially with the SaaS, software as a service solutions and providers by employee. So if you only have 3 employees, that's a very different cost than having 3 million.
Okay, fantastic. Then maybe one final question for you, Dr. Roberts. Now, because you have worked with governments, meaning that you're working with classified data, and you've also worked with the startups, are there systems that jump out to you? So if I'm thinking about cybersecurity, am I going to buy something off the shelf? Am I engaging a company to come and create something that's bespoke to me? What am I doing? I know there are different elements to cybersecurity, but how do I generally think about this? Over to you, Dr. Roberts.
Thank you so much. And that's a fantastic question, because the answer in the corporate setting and government setting is that there is not an off the shelf. There's a one-stop shop where you can get all of the different ingredients, but even those must be customized to the environment, whether it's on premise, whether the data is being held in the cloud, whether it's a hybrid solution. And one of the biggest challenges is how big the files are of the antivirus softwares and all these things, which really degrade performance and lag system times and so forth, and fill up the memory of devices. And then even if I get all the staff to deploy this, next week there's a new patch and an update. And what's the likelihood of getting all of your employees to do that? So really, user adoption is a huge factor when you're considering what to do. Latency is a big factor, and then the how that will interact with all of your integrations and APIs. We have several solutions. Actually, CPF Kenya is a leader in this regard, and so we are very thankful to work with them on the leading cutting edge technologies for small, medium enterprise businesses and governments as well.
Okay, thank you so much. Now I'm coming to you, Musa, if you're able to just put on your camera and prepare to just answer 1 or 2 questions. And I'll come to Tony, and we also have June, who's joined us, and she will be making contributing remarks. June, I will be coming to you in a few. Musa, thank you for your presentation. And I understand that you focus on people, and there's the element of people and technology. We've covered technology and the strategic standpoint from Dr. Roberts. From your perspective, you are domiciled in Kenya. The last 6 months, I can't imagine how much work you've had to do. When you look at Kenyan businesses and you look at Kenyan businesses transitioning from a physical a physical value chain to a digital or virtual value chain, if you like, what are some of the key risks that have jumped out at you so that we can help answer what the key considerations today should be when it comes to cybersecurity and people at an institutional level? Over to you, Mr. Wesitsa.
Thank you, Peter, for that question. And you're very right to say that in the last few months, especially with COVID, people have had to really focus on technology for them to be able to continue providing their service or continue to actually survive. And with that, you find that many organizations that would otherwise have not gone remote, put their users on, VPNs and things like those, they have had to do it because they have had to do that to survive. So, but what has happened is we found that we have opened ourselves up. So we have more and more people right now who have connectivity. They have, their users are connecting to their devices, their users are connecting to their data, but then it is so unstructured. So actually, again, that just gets back to the point that it is very important to focus on the people. It's very important to focus on the staff. So technology is not the everything. Okay, so what we actually have found is that people are now realizing more and more that even though I have this firewall, even though I have this antivirus, I have this brilliant anti-malware installed, I still have people who are still the custodians of the information. These are the same people who will have the passwords, who will have the credentials. These are the same people who will be sharing their usernames, they'll be sharing their passwords on their Facebook, on their Twitter, on their Gmails, and so on and so forth. So actually, the need for investing in training personnel, the need for investing in getting people to have this proper competence has actually risen. And we've seen that there's more people now who are having this conversation about information security awareness, okay? There's more people who are thinking about, can we can we be proactive about doing a phishing attack? Can you come in and do a phishing attack for me, so that I can actually get my people understand how it would look like in a real life scenario, so that they can now protect themselves. So the human firewall, okay, is that much more important right now, because your network is so extended. I mean, people have to access your network from their home. So as Dr. Roberts has said, you had one point of egress or ingress in your network. Now you have as many as you have employees. So are you going to install firewalls in everybody's houses? Maybe not. Yeah. So yeah, so that's what's been happening a lot now. So, but we definitely, on the positive, we have seen a very positive uptake by organizations thinking about their staff, thinking about improving the level of awareness of their staff. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, because now you're really bringing in the element of digital neighbors, and Dr. Roberts brought out the risk context in terms of, I have people going out, how do I manage that? Maybe you can just help us understand briefly, when you are looking at the risks affiliated with the people and customers in terms of your stakeholder community as a business, then what are your strategic considerations? Are you going and looking for something out there? Are you engaging with your internal ICT department to craft something that's bespoke? How much money are you putting aside? Because from the case study you have shared, there was about $14 million at stake. So for me not to get there, what am I thinking about, especially at a strategic level? Because that sort of now ends up trickling down and becoming tactical and an execution standpoint. What has been your experience looking at Kenya for the last 6 months? And what is one or two things that people should think about strategically for execution in coming months? Over to you, Mr. Wasitsa.
Okay, there's a lot of fear. First of all, that we must admit, and I think a lot of us security practitioners sometimes are to blame for that, because we want to get a quick fix, and because we want people to sort of like jumpstart them, then we use FUD a lot. So we always it's always doom and gloom. But while that can give you some short-term success, you want to have this thing long-term. So you want to implement a process or a framework that's sustainable. So what we have seen working for us and our clients is when the conversation is had at the top, at the board level or at the senior management level, about implementing something that is sustainable. So setting up a framework where we can have cybersecurity implemented, and not just quick fixes, but something that will always work for you and will always improve and will always be relevant depending on the changing nature of cybersecurity landscape. So that's what really the conversation is about. So it's more advisory and it's more evangelism, actually, yeah? Getting people to join you and getting people to start to think about longer term implementations rather than quick fixes and short-term fixes. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. So now we'll start taking the questions from those of us who are engaging. Remember, it's CPF Kenya on Facebook Live or CPF Kenya on YouTube. If you're not on this particular webinar, we want to hear your questions as well as your comments. We have many numerous questions. So I'll just start taking them one by one, and then I can pass them off to the panelists. For Mr. Wasitsa and Dr. Roberts, as well as Tony, if you're able to, please put on your cameras, then I can be able to direct questions to you as we progress. So there's a question here from Mr. Martin Kinoti, and he asks, what are the panelists' views on existing legal frameworks on cybercrime? Most data protection bills or acts across Africa speak to processing of data as opposed to access to data. Is this enough to prevent cybercrime? What more do we need to do to manage this? I'll take a brief comment from each of you. I'll start with Musa, then I'll go to Roland, and then I will go to Tony. Mr. Wasitsa, kindly unmute your mic and respond to this.
So actually, you'll see that locally. So let me speak about the local context. So in Kenya, we now have a Data Protection Act, yeah, which was pushed into law in November 2019. And so recently, as recent as this month, we now have a data commissioner. So it has been slow going because there's been a lot of push and pull about getting the data commissioner appointed. That has now happened. So we fully expect that now the implementation of the law is going to start, catching pace, and it's going to move faster. But actually, there is a legal framework for this, Keynote. So currently, the responsibility, and again, Dr. Roberts mentioned this, the responsibility is now being pushed to you, the data processor, the data controller, to have, you're the one who's answerable. So it's not just about the cyber criminal anymore. It's about you who owns this information, you who collected this data from your customer. Okay, you who's holding this data that belongs to your staff. You actually are responsible for protecting it. So the law actually makes you responsible in as much as the cyber criminal is going to be culpable. You also are supposed to make sure that you are protecting this information. So that's what I'd say in terms of the local context of this.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Wasitsa. Dr. Roberts, please unmute and give us your brief response to this question.
Thank you, Madam Muhammad. I would say that there is much great work being done around the world, legislatively. A lot of summits. We hold a cybersecurity summit with the former cybersecurity czar of the United States every year as a partner. So we are very active in the conversation, but and also in the development of technology. I think in data security around cybersecurity. All of these are great efforts. Educating young people on the positives of white hacking and actually creating the environments and infrastructure to teach them, not that it's the scary boogeyman and be afraid of this, but instead say, hey, come learn how this works and use it for good and for right. And there are also behavioral, consumer behavior and user behavior issues. There is personal responsibility, because if I leave a bunch of laptops in my car and then I leave my car unlocked, well, who's the idiot here? Do I blame the person's wrong for taking it? I'm wrong for not protecting my assets reasonably. And so there's all of these are important dynamics to addressing this. But here's the bottom line for me is you can't ever say it's because the technology does not exist to combat it. It absolutely does. Most companies and governments simply are not willing to invest in it. They're doing the best they have with what they know. The problem is there are uneducated IT people, or it is job preservation for some of the senior IT staff, because the most robust cybersecurity software, they're not as needed anymore, because there is no super admin with the right kind of technology to actually stop this.
Thank you so much for that, Dr. Roberts. Tony Olang, who is the Executive Director of Lights, please give us your response to the same question. Over to you, Tony.
Thank you very much once again, Bide, and thank you everyone for staying on with us. Now, with regards to data security, as we have mentioned, there's a process as to how it does happen, and no one will break into your house if there's nothing to be stolen. So there's the profiling and how you present yourself as being vulnerable or open to a hack. And as Musa and Dr. Roland have mentioned, we now have a data commissioner, and the process for her to sit in office substantially is underway. We also have software that can disable or scramble data. And once this is scrambled, then you're then having a higher level or a higher degree of comfort that whatever data you may have lost might not pose as much of a risk as it does out there, because when the hacker does try to open it to present it to somebody else, they just find some scrambled piece of whatever it is they'll find in an empty flash disk. And then the whole component around data, personal data. I'm seeing questions about how, if someone posts their holiday pictures on social media, how that then makes them make the organization vulnerable to a hack. As recently as yesterday, I saw a gentleman who posted his boarding pass on social media. He's posting his pictures on the beach. So if a hacker does then go to your corporate website and finds that you're the guy in charge of IT, and he's then able to profile you, he's able to get names of your children, your wife, where you are, what time you're on the flight. And when he calls you and discusses these sensitive or items that are close to your heart with you, you then feel inclined to some certain extent to be able to open up to him. And you may accidentally divulge sensitive information to the hacker. And then this is how the hacker then does access your corporate database. So these are some of the footprints that we should avoid leaving open and then creating bigger challenges for everybody else. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much. I have a couple of questions coming. I will come back to them, but I can see June has joined us. June, would you be able to please put on your camera? I can introduce you. You can give us your contributing remarks. Then we can continue with the question and answer session. June, are you there? Can you hear me? Please put on your camera. Okay, so we'll just give June a few more seconds to see if she's able to join with us. June? Okay. I'll go to the next question. And before I go to the next question, you can see there is a poll that has popped up on your screen. Again, please answer this and we can continue. The question is, do you think organizations need to put in place measures to protect their data? Please answer that and you can be able to submit. I can see June is here. June, a very warm welcome to you. Good morning. Let me just read your bio and then you can give us your contributing remarks to the conversation today, which is the evolution of cybercrime. June Yakan Munyeki is the founder and the CEO of Timeless Women of Wonder. June is a senior management professional with over 14 years experience, having worked in the private sector and with several international NGOs. Currently, June is the CEO of Timeless Women of Wonder, and she is passionate about championing change through the spaces that she sits in. June uses innovative designs to come up with spaces that are able to address the needs of the people in the spaces where she works. She does lead a team of talented individual partners and consultants to design and develop spaces. Through the course of her career, June has set up operations along with the integration plans for appropriate use of technology for regional offices within Africa. She has managed projects worth excess of $3 million and has been successful in leading across functional teams to deliver goals and achieve targets. As a business change and information technology specialist, Ms. Munyeki has worked on challenging assignments where she has introduced novel solutions that have turned around near failing projects. We know June has been very passionate about technology, and it's just befitting to be able to hear her contributing remarks. June, please unmute your mic, and we will look, and we are quite eager to hear your commentary for today. We are running on short on time, so we wait to hear that. Then we can take a couple of questions, which I will relate to all the panelists as well as June. Then we can be able to end this session. Over to you, June.
Thanks, Mama. Mbide, it's so good to be here. And thank you so much. I apologize for being in and out. I was actually in and out of government office, Sharia house. So you can imagine how that has been. So thank you for the patience. Yeah, cybercrime is really, really a topic that we cannot ignore in our day to day. I'm taking the call from my car, so I hope that is okay. Yeah, I'm sure that Dr. Roland and Tony have really underscored the value of cybersecurity and cybersecurity solutions that we have today. But what I'll be speaking to is just our way of life and how our way of life has evolved over time. When you look at how we were doing business and how our lives were running 50 years ago, 30 years ago, 10 years ago, and now, you look at the last decade, there's a lot of very, very radical shifts with the coming and use of technology. Previously, when you look at the matters of security, we were limited to just our physical security. Is your money safe? Are you physically safe? Is your home safe? Right? And is the bank safe? Physical buildings and physical aspects of life or what we were thinking about. But with the evolution of technology and a radical shift, in fact, technology is so perishable today, yeah, that you can hardly keep up. There's lots of new things coming in. There's lots of new ways of doing things coming in using tech, and the different platforms also may add on to that complexity. You have a lot of mobile gadgets. We have phones that are now smartphones. we're moving on to smart wearables. So our eyeglasses, our earphones, are going to be smart. We will be, in fact, the next evolution of mobile will be on wearables, integrated to wearables. Okay. So looking at, can you hear me? Be there,
Yes,
am I
yes,
online?
June. I can hear you, only
Awesome.
that your camera has gone off, but we can hear you loud and clear.
Yeah, it's gone off because of these questions that are popping up.
Okay.
Is it back on? Yeah, we have the pop-up questions that are coming up. I think
Okay. It's okay. Not to worry.
yeah.
Please continue. You're taking us through the
Yeah,
evolution of technology.
yeah. So when you look at evolution of technology, it's quite fast moving, fast changing, very perishable. What is on today, a month later is obsolete. In fact, phones can hardly keep up with the tech and with the needs. And we're looking at tech also moving to a space where we're looking at convenience for people, making things very convenient and personalized for people. So people are looking at what works best for them. Even the developers and manufacturers of tech are looking at personalization and convenience, efficiencies, connectivity. They're looking at embedding, our locations in those to just increase the efficiencies, because people want home deliveries. So we're switching on location all the time. We're looking at finding our ways through GPS. So we have location switched on. So while we're getting more and more adaptable to convenience, and while we're moving forward to a more convenient lifestyle, we're also increasing our insecurity if we're not conscious, because this is a world where everyone can know where I am. I mean, if my location is switched on, you can know, all of you can know exactly what coordinates I'm seated on right now, and 10 years ago, that was a thing of the past. But are people conscious of just how much, information is out there that people can have of them, okay? Even as we put our likes in the personalization of things, people get to know you more better. And of course, the world is not all sanitized. It's not all good people out there. So the reasons behind why people gather information is different. Some people may be gathering that information to improve life, to improve, work, to improve revenues, to improve data, all that. But others could be getting that information to warp it, to take advantage of the gaps that comes with that, and to expose and entrench and harm people. Okay. So looking at just while we're very excited in buying all these new things, taking that moment to think, before you answer that question, before you buy that new gadget, or before you buy and put in all the data, select all. Hardly do people think, what am I selecting and what have I just given? What data have I just put out there? We're very quick to move to, I agree, to all the terms and conditions, agreed. Do you ever take time to read and see what those terms and conditions saying that your eye may be used for research? Maybe you bought a wearable and the terms and conditions are saying, by saying agreed, you're accepting that your biometrics and your data will be used for research. Are you aware of that? And then, that really exposes people. I like to encourage people to read and to gather information and to look at what the data is saying. We have data protection laws. I don't know how many people now know that we have data protection laws in Africa, in Kenya. 2 years ago in 2018, we were able to pass the laws on data protection, and all that was coming to look at how we're using data in a very fast changing, space. So what I like about what we're offering with Lights and the solutions on cybersecurity that we're having is looking at, very affordable, personalized cybersecurity tools, okay, that are not inhibitive to people. Because when people hear cybersecurity, hacking, and the solutions that come with it, most people think of big corporates, a lot of expensive money. But now we're looking at modular solutions, a menu for every tier of need, so that we're securing ourselves as we go. I would just say that security starts with you. It starts with your awareness. You have to put the first line of defense by being aware. All right, being aware of what you're engaging in, being aware of what you're signing on to, being aware of what you're sharing, like Tony says. And then the second line of defense is obviously the tools we use. I know that some of the solutions that have been discussed prior to my coming online from the previous speakers could have shared, solutions for personal individual, things that you can, software that you can install on your phone or you can install on your machine that just puts a fast line of defense to protect you from hackers, okay? And then the corporate solutions. But what I'd like to say, however good the technology is, your personal awareness must always be on the forefront of things. What you're exposing, what you're sharing, your behavior, what you're agreeing to be on your body, what sensors are being taken. These watches, they're definitely connecting to a database somewhere that's storing data. Do you know what that database is? Do you know what they're doing with the data? Are you aware of that? Okay. So I just like to stop there. We have a lot of young people, university students who are very, very tech. I mean, in fact, right now, my 6-year-old is so tech. It's all gadgets, it's iPhones, it's all this, it's the tab, it's the PS, you get it. It's the PlayStations, all these are connected to the internet, and obviously to a server somewhere, to a cloud somewhere that's storing data that has geolocations, right? And interconnectivity. Right now you have, I see my children playing games, from their homes. They just call each other 10 friends and they're all online and playing together and they're not in the same location. And I'm like, what? But what is that data that's been able to interconnect them? And what are they sharing? What are the entry points into your home from that gadget? You get it? So just being aware and seeing how we can be able to be sensitive and take care of data. So I'm going to stop there and address any questions, but I think that now is the time to be very conscious and to be very aware of how fast technology is changing, and not to be too, I don't know why people are too eager to keep changing their gadgets and updating. Just stay on one platform for a bit, because we're quite quick to keep moving to the latest and the next and the next, but we don't know what we're going on with, even as we're changing onto the next. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, June, and we wish you all the best at Sharia House, and we can't wait to hear your assessment of the cybersecurity for the government when you are there. But that's certainly on a light note.
Yeah.
So we have another poll that's coming up on your screen. Does your organization have an internal cybersecurity? Please continue to answer this, and we'll probably be able to share something as we go along. Now we get into the question and answer session, and we can take questions for the next 10 or so minutes, and I will be able to relay these questions to the panelists. So I can see your cameras are on. Thank you for that. Let me start with the first question here from Ziana Mudu. She says that network infrastructure security is the most vulnerable area for fintechs. With the digital economy upon us, how can fintechs best protect themselves? I would like to probably pass this question to Tony, and then Dr. Roberts can also be able to answer that. Let's start off with Tony. Over to you.
Thank you very much. There's a lot of exciting information coming in through here. I think what most people need to focus on is the granular level of whatever it is they are storing and being able to secure it at the granular level. As it has been mentioned now, there's a lot of work from home, and we are not securing our home networks as much as the organization is securing the network within the office. So that is definitely a point of weakness. I'm hearing elements in this conversation about return on investment. Are we looking at cybersecurity as a strategic objective, or is it not captured in the strategy? Is there a budget, appropriate budget allocated for this? And I'm seeing also questions coming about government. Is government ready to invest in this? Are corporates ready to invest in this? I'm hearing conversations around the mobile phone. I'm just, highlighting some of the key issues around the response to that question. We have downloads that we have from the various platforms. These downloads, are we aware of the hidden capability of the downloads? We are seeing that some certain manufacturers are providing certain software which are doing things that we probably don't know. Madam Nyakan has just mentioned, do we read the fine print? Are you accepting certain things that we are not aware of? We are looking at our houses and the Internet of Things. Very soon, everything will be interconnected. Your house, your car, your fridge, your lighting, your entertainment, everything is going to be pre-programmed for you. So the car will call you downstairs, you sit in the car, dinner is ready when you get home. Whatever movie you wanted to watch over the weekend is preset. Everything is so preset and interconnected. Cars, we now have maps in the vehicles. Are these maps vulnerable? It even gets more interesting when you talk about self-driving vehicles, because the software is going to be dependent on the map. What if somebody deflects the road by 2 meters? it then has a very huge impact on how everybody's self-driving vehicle is going to behave on the road. Automatic check-ins, when you go to hotels, there's going to be less and less human interaction. We are talking about, just now I've been informed during this session that there's a big bank that has just advertised the vacancy of their head of IT. And that's exactly what we are talking about. Once a hacker sees that, he knows that the watchman is not at the door. I can go in and do what I want. Thank you, Muema. Thank you, Bide, sorry.
All right, so that's an interesting perspective. Thank you so much for that. I will relay the next question to Dr. Roberts. If you would like to give a rejoinder to that first question, please feel free. We have another question here that comes from Martin, and he says, in the era of digital data processing, we have seen organizations leverage on economies of scale by shifting towards cloud computing. This has seen an upsurge in cross-border data processing, and strides have been made in pseudonymization or anonymization of transmitted data across borders. But is this enough to prevent unauthorized access to transit data? And what more can be done? Over to you, Dr. Roberts.
Well, great question. I'm glad that came up in this segment. The truth is, whether you're using AWS or you're using Microsoft's, platform or what have you, cloud is obviously the direction that everything is going because of the economies of scale and the cost and it makes a lot of sense, the accessibility. However, it does not mitigate the protection of your data, even though it's being hosted on their servers. So that's why you have to choose products. You have to change how you think about cybersecurity. You're trying to still figure out, how do I protect a perimeter? You thought you've outsourced it to someone else on their cloud network. It's still your data. So you have to be able to secure your data no matter where it lives, no matter who has it, at rest, in transit, at any endpoint, to and from any endpoint. So I think that is critical to understand. Also, I would say that as it relates to fintech, really, this is why so many of the financial institutions and so forth have data breaches. It's not because people are hacking necessarily into the banks directly. It's a lot of the third-party vendors that they require. It might be the ATM software providers. It may be the folks, with conduits connected to the mobile phone payments and so forth. It's all the different checks and balances all the way through that make sure your bank account stay updated based on how much money you're spending or deposits you receive. It's all of those transactions and the movement of that data where the fail points are. And so I would just, I go back and highly encourage that this is not even just an industry specific, but there are specific steps that everyone can take, every company can take to protect themselves and their data. Moving to the cloud is, I think, a wise, and it is definitely the future with the IoT. But it does not outsource your cybersecurity responsibility. So you need to start focusing on solutions that provide data security, not cybersecurity.
All right. Thank you so much. So the focus is data security as well. I'll take one last question and I'll be able to pass this through to Mr. Wasitsa and one other question to June. And then gentlemen and lady, please prepare your closing remarks. I think for our audiences, we beg your indulgence just for an extra 10 minutes. You can see it's not an easy conversation to park, but our audiences, our expert, our keynote speakers, as well as panelists and contributors have been able to give us an overview of what is happening. I will ask that each of you starts to prepare your closing remarks. And in your closing remarks, perhaps you can also mention what is the latest research when it comes to cybersecurity. And yes, the president of Kenya is flying through from where I stay. So you might hear planes, but that's on a light note. So bear with me. Working from home also comes with additional factors. So there is an overpass where I stay. But prepare your comments. Be able to answer to us then what is the next thing that we must do, because we have a new norm. So then what are your closing remarks in light of cybersecurity? There's a new norm. What's the one or two things that need to be considered at a strategic level or also at an individual level when we are moving forward? This question is for you, Mr. Musa Wasitsa. And again, it comes from Martin. Martin, I can see your questions here. I'm not being biased. It's just I was following the questions just to ensure they were all answered. And he says that social engineering is one of the common techniques used by hackers to psychologically manipulate or trick users to revealing sensitive information. With quite low literacy levels in Africa and the high uptake of digital products, do you think that the tech companies rolling out digital products on a day-to-day are doing enough by investing on improving literacy levels? And the follow-up to this is, do you think we need to set up a legal framework that creates a fund like the gambling fund so that tech firms can be able to use it to enhance the knowledge literacy when it comes to cybersecurity as well as ICT affiliated services? Over to you, and June, please prepare. I will be coming to you shortly.
Thank you, Mbitha. Thank you for that question, Martin. I think I see the concern because you're interested in finding out what more can developers and what we call service providers can do, to help their users. But there's this thing we always say that if the product is free, then most likely you're the product, right? So it's about your data. And at the end of the day, there's some responsibility that you also bear. And that's why we really try to focus on ensuring that you, the user, you, the customer, are aware of your responsibility towards protecting your own data. And so it's not always about technology. It's not always about having a password. It's not always about having a VPN in place or a firewall, but it's about your behavior. So how are you behaving online? Now, if we're talking about applications, so we know about right now how easy it is for you to just set up and get a mobile loan. Yeah, it's very easy. You can set up on Tala, set up on Branch, any of those, and there's so many providers out there right now, and you can actually get a mobile loan. I mean, how are they doing this? Somebody has to assess your data. Somebody has to actually do some credit scoring, and they're doing it in a minute. How are they able to do this? Because your data is all over the place. So we're able to look at it, correlate it, and pick it up and pick habits. And we're able to see that this person actually is credit worthy, and I can actually loan them something like $2, and I know they'll pay back within a week. Or I can loan them $10, and I know they'll pay back. Or I can reach up to $50. I think they're more likely than not to pay back. So the reason why we're able to do this, again, is it is a necessary service, first of all. So it is a service. You actually need this service. And for this service to work, we need to know who you are. So we need your data. So things are happening because that's how they need to work. So remember that if the more you give out of your data, then the more you can get in terms of service. Think about it that way. So as a service provider, I need to know more about you so that I can tailor my service towards you. And that's where the world is going. It's more about personalization, even as a service provider. So what would be more important is for you to realize that this is your data, and therefore the responsibility of protecting your information actually starts with you. So even as you're signing up on Tala, as you're signing up on Uber, as you're signing up on Carrefour, their loyalty management products, as you're signing up on these things so that you can get more and more and more and more and more, you need to know that this is your data which is going out there. And so you also need to protect it. Okay.
All right. Thank you so much. June, I have a question for you. If you're there, please unmute your mic. There's a question that talks about how do we protect our children? And I ask you this question because you talked about your 6-year-old and his playmates and how they're playing virtually. So there's a question here that says, then how do I think about protecting and managing the risks actually in my own home? Would you be able to answer this? If you are able to, yes, I can see your back. Thank you so much, June. And if possible, maybe you can also give us an overview of when it comes to cyber forensics, when it comes to looking at the Cybercrimes Act of Kenya, are there some up and coming considerations that have come into place based on where you sit and some of the things that people need to look at and consider at a strategic level? Over to you, June.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mbide. And yeah, those are very, very pertinent questions because we need to look at our day-to-day, okay? How are we protecting ourselves day-to-day? I think knowledge is power, and ignorance, while they say is bliss, is very costly. So people perish for lack of knowledge. I think we're training on data security and awareness because people don't know. And when they don't know, they just operate in ignorance. And don't underestimate the intelligence of children and of people. Do not look at people because of their status and because of the kind of work they do to assume that they can't understand the matters of data security and all that. It can be simplified. So I think from the home level, from as little children, you just talk in the way that they understand and say, when you come here, this is how somebody can attack you. This is how somebody can use this opportunity for a bad thing. So when you're doing this, make sure you press this not, and then we have to also monitor. We don't just leave parenting to chance. You understand? I think we need to be monitoring. Who are these people? How are they communicating? Because we can't.
All right, June, we seem to be losing June there, not to worry. All right, gentlemen, I am so pressed on time, 30 seconds, closing remarks, and then we can get to the tail end of this conversation. And hold on, I will be able to let you know what kind of information we will be able to share with you. June, sorry, your connection is not very clear. I think we'll probably have to stop it at that because we are losing you. We can't hear you clearly. So I'll come back to you in a little while, but now I'll take the closing remarks. I'll start off with Tony, then I'll go to Musa, then I'll go to Dr. Roland in that order. Over to you, Tony. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mbide. I think I'll start off by talking about and highlighting awareness, especially in this era of work from home. There's the element of on-prem, cloud, or hybrid work environments, and how we store our data. Corporate strategy. How are we handling strategy? Is this a strategic conversation, or is it just happening somewhere at the corner of the IT department inside the server room? How are we trading? We are now going more and more onto online trading. We are buying things on the mobile phone. We are looking at the likelihood. I've seen a question in the chat about the possibility of a universal hack amongst or across all banks. We are not saying it can't happen. There's a possibility of what we are calling an Armageddon situation. We should do less and less displays of what we are doing, which will then open us to attacks, both on the personal level, on the corporate level. I have mentioned that recruitment of especially strategic IT staff might not need to be advertised very loudly, because it then gives, if we go back to the highlight I gave in my presentation, it then opens up the door and the creativity of the potential hackers. Internet of Things, everything is getting interconnected. All our devices, your house, your car, your phone, your fridge, your washing machine, everything, your lighting in your house, they are able to talk to each other. As you drive towards the house, the gate will open. You get to the door, you use your biometrics, the lights will come on automatically, the fridge will start cooling your wine, the washing machine will start running. It knows at this time I like watching the news, and all these things will just happen. How do these devices then open us up to the weaknesses that we are talking about securing? Our firewalls, whatever infrastructure we have in place, are we constantly reviewing them? Are we looking at ways of improving on what we have in order to match whatever evolution is taking place also on the attack side? And then, of course, we will be happy to hold hands with you on your journey towards achieving cybersecurity and a secure cyber environment. Thank you very much, Mbide.
Thank you very much for that, Tony. Briefly, Mr. Wasitsa, 30 seconds, your closing remarks. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Mbide. So for me, it's just, again, to thank you for having these sessions. It's very important. Awareness is very key. It's a first, it's a first step towards actually getting somewhere. When we can share information, when we can all talk together and, get this level of understanding, get these questions answered, is very good. Now, this goes into organizations. Again, the same approach would be best, where we actually have these workshops, or we have these sessions where we actually share this information. As Tony has said, this information it's a bit lopsided in organizations from my experience. We have a very well and knowledgeable group of people in IT. Then we have the rest of the organization who probably are not as aware. And then we have the biggest problem is at the top, where we have your senior management who are probably the least aware, and yet they're the most risky because of the impact of the data which they hold. So we need to spread this information around the organization. So everybody in the organization needs to have this level of information that actually IT has. And so let's concentrate a bit on our efforts. Let's take them down a level from the technology, put them on the people, so that people understand that they can actually contribute towards information security in an organization. So when I ask somebody on the corridor the question, do you understand information security in your organization? They shouldn't say that, wait, let me call the IT guy. The IT guy is the one who's best placed to answer this. They should know that they themselves can answer that question, because it starts with them. Yeah, so again, those are my remarks. So thank you very much again, Bill. Back to you.
So much. All right, briefly, your closing remarks, Dr. Roberts.
Yes, thank you, Madam Wema, and thank you, CPF Kenya, for hosting the evolution of cybercrime. I believe that lives are at stake. I don't think this is just a data issue. I think actual humanity and lives are at stake. I think my daughters, I remember when she was 5 years old and I had bought an iPod, and one of the games she downloaded, people started talking extremely inappropriately to her. And this was 13 years ago. So I look at the different kinds of advancements that have been made. I look at the biohacking. I look at people being held ransom for their very life. I see the kidnap and other type of situations that we are exposed to with the more information that we all have. And so our physical life truly is at stake. But with most things, you follow the money. And so when we realize who is profiting, how they're profiting, and we can backfill and stopgap some of those holes, we will be making a major dent in cybercrime. And what I will close by saying, I am excited about the future of Africa. I believe that this area is a place, is a niche that the continent of Africa can become known as a leader in the world if they will act. Most governments are the biggest, have the biggest breaches of data beyond any company. So for governments to take responsibility, not just optics, but actually taking measures to protect and secure their data will go a long way. And I believe that Africa can take the lead. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much for that. It's certainly been an engaging morning, learning about the essence of cyber security. And I think what I've heard from all the submissions and the contributions, as well as the questions and the feedback from the polls, is that yes, institutions, at least those that are represented here, do have a department that engages with cybersecurity. But over and above that, COVID-19 has presented additional risk factors. So it's one thing to be able to know, but there's also an opportunity to be able to engage with those of us who've gone ahead of us and are probably better placed to be able to help us craft a strategy. It has to be strategic at the board level coming down, and then also your executing team. The people need to know. And I think the key takeout from today is I shouldn't only just know my neighbors where I stay. I need to understand my digital neighbors. That's a concept that I was not aware of, and I'm certainly appreciative of that. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we are coming to the tail end of this conversation. Keep your questions coming, your comments coming. But as part of the CPF Kenya group today, we would like to know, was this information useful? Did it add value to your day? And what kind of topics would you like us to cover? Because this is something that is pertinent to the conversation and the ethos of CPF Consulting and what they stand for. My name is Mbithe Mwema. I was your moderator for the day. Hold on, do not leave us yet, because we want to wrap up this session. I won't be coming back to speak to you, but in terms of additional housekeeping records, this particular presentation will be available to you if you had registered for this webinar in advance. The recording is already up live on the Facebook page and the YouTube page. That's CPF Kenya. Feel free to go back and interact with it and take notes. I have been able to write numerous notes. When it comes to cybersecurity, it's not a luxury. If you are going to emerge as a winning business in Africa today, you need the digital platform to execute and distribute your goods or services. Cybersecurity is going to be up there, and it has to become an important expense line if you're going to be able to protect the data for your stakeholders. To wrap up this session and to give us the closing remarks, we will have Rosemary Miner, who's the head of CPF Consulting. Rosemary, I can see you are unmuted and ready. Over to you, and thank you everybody for your time and consideration. Over to you, Rosemary.
Thank you so very much, Mbithe. It has been an awesome morning, very, very deep conversations. And I don't know, I wouldn't add anything to this, because if we had more time, would have been able to get deeper and deeper into this conversation. I like the fact that we have just learned today, if we didn't know, that cybercrime is with us, and that we cannot put the genie back in the bottle and keep it away. It is here with us. And so for that reason, therefore, security starts with each one of us. If you secure your data, then your neighbors and getting to know your digital neighbors, then we will live in a much safer world. And the other bit that I have gathered from this conversation is that we keep learning. I know we have learned so much this morning. We keep learning. Learning is a process, cradle to grave. And so the minute we stop learning, then we die. We have seen institutions dying because they stopped learning. They were not able to secure their data. And so I really must thank every one of you for this conversation that we have had today. We have been your hosts, CPF Consulting. And CPF Consulting, we are the management advisory arm of CPF Group. We are trainers and we are consultants. We train in a number of areas: leadership, management, performance management, electronic document management, and therefore cybersecurity, very critical for us. We also train in social security matters, including retirement benefits, setup of schemes, pre-retirement, preparing yourself for that time when you will no longer be able to continue in gainful employment or gainful earnings. We also train in strategy. We do strategy formulation and consulting. We are very, very active in risk management and business continuity. We are also very active in HR consulting, HR policy development, and so on and so forth. So we continue engaging with us on CPF Kenya. We will give you a lot more information. We have had very many webinars. We will continue having other webinars. Please let us know what else you'd like us to discuss. If you'd like us to continue with this discussion, let us know. We will bring back the panelists. If you want us to bring other panelists, we will bring other panelists so that then we can be ready, better prepared to live in this digital world. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to thank each one of you, all our participants, and all our panelists, Dr. Roland, Robert. Really, really very excited to have you. I know it is early morning in the USA, and we are excited that you're sharp and active this early morning. Moses Wetsusa, thank you very much for your insights. Thank you so very much. My good friend, June Nyakan Munyeki, always a pleasure listening to you, your passion in the discussions at all times. Thank you so very much. Tony Olang, thank you so very, very much for the conversation. And the leadership of CPF Group, led by Jose Akili, thank you so very, very much. I will not forget to thank the technical team, because without them, then we wouldn't have been able to do what we have done. And finally, most important, because they get to thank everybody, and many of us forget to thank them, is the MC, our moderator, Mbithe. We thank you so very, very much for this exciting discussion that we have had today. I know we took your time in the morning. Would like to release you so that you can go back to your usual activities. Would like that you continue engaging with us, CPF Kenya. Thank you very much. Have a great time. If it is morning where you are, have a great time. If it is night where you are, have a great evening, have a great night. Thank you.